This presentation focuses on the second part of our lecture regarding disclosure and privacy. So in this section of the presentation, I will primarily discuss privacy and the ways in which we choose to manage information to protect or maintain our privacy. We started the first part of the lecture with a set of questions and scenarios for you all to think through. So I'm going to do the same thing here to begin part two. So these are two different scenarios that I want you to consider. So on the left, let's say that you have been in an established romantic relationship for quite some time now, and your partner has only met your parents a couple of times, but everything has gone smoothly each time. Your parents, however, are in the process of selling the family business, and so this puts your family in a time of kind of uncertainty and instability for a number of reasons. And therefore, they have asked you not to speak to anyone outside the family about the situation, which includes your romantic partner. So the question is, what do you do? The second scenario here is that you have an ex who contacts you. So they send you some kind of message, whether it's a text message or they message you through social media. They basically just want to say hello and see how you are doing. You have no intention of responding to the message and you delete the message. But you're in an established relationship with someone else. So again, I ask you, what do you do? So looking at the first situation, there might be a few things going through your head, right? Or a few like things that you would have to consider to figure out what you would do. Um, you might want to tell your partner because this is somebody that you are close to and that you trust. And as we just learned in the previous unit, disclosure is how we get to know other people and it's how we develop relationships and develop intimacy gradually over time, right? And many of our close relationships are characterized by trust and openness. So on the one hand, you'd really like to share this with someone who's important to you. On the other hand, though, your family is expecting you to demonstrate loyalty to them in this situation and asking that you don't share information with somebody outside because they are, again, everything's kind of uncertain at the moment. So there might be a number of reasons why they don't want any information getting out in a way that they can't control. In the second scenario, which might be more relatable or more common for college students, you're thinking, okay, well, like this person contacted me. It seems like there's nothing nefarious going on, but I don't want to discuss this with my current partner because I don't want that person to worry. I don't want that person to get jealous or to think that this is something that happens all the time. But you've already made the decision to delete the message. So you also at this time have no proof that you didn't respond or that the message didn't say anything um, unfavorable, right? Or wasn't too flirty or something like that. So you want to probably manage and protect your identity, right? Your self-image, but at the same time, you want to be open and honest, not only about the communication, but also about the decision that you made to delete the message, which could send a totally different message to your romantic partner than one that you certainly intend. So there are a lot of considerations here, and each of these scenarios speaks to the tension between disclosure and privacy that we started talking about in the first part of this unit. So just as a reminder, we discussed the dialectical tension between revealing information and concealing information. And so we're going to dig into that a bit more here in the second part of the lecture. There are, as we know, risks associated with self-disclosure. And so it makes sense that people don't always want to disclose personal or private information. And one of the primary theoretical frameworks that allows us to understand kind of the decisions people make regarding what information to share and how to go about sharing it and with who is communication privacy management. But first, let's make sure we're clear on what private information is. So we can define private information in a number of different ways, but for our purposes, we'll say this is any information that makes you feel some level of vulnerability. So if something is private, use of that use of that information or knowledge of that information is restricted in some way. So communication privacy management theory helps to explain basically how people maintain privacy boundaries or access to their personal private information. And this framework is rooted in the assumption that people set up what we call boundary structures as a way to control the risks inherent in disclosing private information. So I mentioned boundary structures before, so let's make sure we're clear on the definition of what boundary structures are. These are the rules that you, as the information holder, create that guide who has access to your private information and who can share that private information, and maybe even in what ways they can share that private information. So, boundary structures are based on three principles associated with private information. We have ownership, control, and turbulence, which we will explicate over the next few slides. We'll start with privacy, ownership, and control, and cover both of those at the same time here. So, privacy ownership is the idea that we believe that we rightfully own our private information, right? This is your information, it's no one else's information. And therefore, privacy control reflects the idea that we believe that we have a right to control our private information. And in any interpersonal situation, you might fear loss of control over your information. And again, this is information you own. You hold ownership over this information. And so the fear of losing control over that is very real. So again, if something is private, use or knowledge of that information is restricted in some way. Privacy is something that can be maintained or given up through the process of disclosure. And when we manage our privacy, we try to control the flow of information. We want to decide who has access to the information and what aspects of the information they can share and what information they should not share. Sometimes we share information with people we trust, and those people become co owners of that information according to, again, this theoretical framework. So, co owners are people who know our private information, have access to our private information. Co owners can be authorized, and so we might call these people boundary insiders. So, authorized co owners are people that you intentionally and deliberately choose to share your private information with. So, this is a trusted person, a confidant, so to speak. Unauthorized co owners are unfortunately people that we did not choose to disclose information to, but they have somehow gained access to our private information anyway. So, this might be through another authorized co owner, right? So, maybe you told your best friend something, and then your best friend has now shared this information with somebody outside of the two of you. There's another possibility where an unauthorized co-owner exists because they came across the information on their own or found out some other way, right? So, but these are people that you did not choose to share your information with. Having co-owners to private information certainly requires some level of boundary coordination. So if you have a family secret, like in the previous example, there are probably rules about communication in place. So again, who you can share or what you can share with someone else, how much you can share with someone else, how the information should be framed, so on and so forth. You might decide that you want to share the secret with your partner, but your family doesn't want you to. And so you maybe have to negotiate with them about sharing some information, but not all information. Or maybe your family just outright says, no, you cannot talk about this with this other person. If you decide to share anyway, which you could do, you now have to put rules in place for who the partner can talk to and what they're allowed to say or not say. Or now that you've told that this person, maybe you now feel an obligation to let your family know that you told your partner and therefore violated their privacy rules. So, in other words, even if you decide to share private information with someone, you still want to want control over what is shared, how it is shared, and this speaks to the strategic nature of privacy control. There is a clip from Gilmore Girls on Husky CT. It's 2 scenes back to back. So what you'll see is that 2 people. The scene opens with 2 people kissing in a high school classroom, and it is the parent of the main character, Rory Gilmore. Her mom is kissing her teacher, and then Paris, who also goes to the school and who has been who doesn't get along with Rory, at least in the early seasons of the show, takes the opportunity to share that she has seen Rory's mom kissing the teacher, and then you can kind of see how things spiral from there. So watch the clip and then see if you can identify aspects of privacy ownership and privacy control in those 2 scenes. All right, so that brings us to privacy turbulence. Co-owners of information sometimes undergo privacy turbulence, which is when new events force you to update your boundary management, often because you, as the original information holder's rules, have been violated. And it could be intentional or unintentional, right? But your boundary structures, when you experience privacy turbulence, may need to be strengthened or they may need to be renegotiated in some way. And again, as I mentioned before, successful boundary management often requires cooperation between people. And I think this basically just boils down to the fact that co-owners of information have to agree that the information is private and should not be shared. If you're the only one who perceives something to be private, or if you're the only one who perceives something to be a secret, it's really not a secret after all, is it? So privacy turbulence occurs when your expectations regarding your privacy and privacy management are violated. And then here, I'll direct your attention to 2 clips from Friends on Husky CT. Again, it's an ongoing scene, but it's broken up into 2 clips. So I want you to see if you can use communication privacy management to analyze and understand Ross's behavior as he attempts to control the flow of information. Again, to set the scene up, Ross and Rachel have taken a break. Ross is very upset. He goes out with his friends later on that night, has a bit too much to drink, and ends up hooking up with someone outside of his relationship with Rachel. And then in the morning, he wakes up to find out that Rachel has left a message on his answering machine because it was the 90s, and she wants to make up and she doesn't want to take a break, and so she wants to keep the relationship going. And now Ross has to find a way to ensure that Rachel doesn't find out about his one night stand with the other woman. So if we're concerned about our privacy, what are some things that we can do to make sure that we manage or maintain that privacy? Just as a quick note, privacy management can also be thought of as information management because that's really what you're doing. You have information, it's your information, and you're trying to make sure that you maintain control over that information. So there are 2 kind of main strategies for managing information, and these are topic avoidance and secret keeping. So, topic avoidance is something that happens when you deliberately avoid discussing a certain topic, and we'll talk about reasons for doing so. And secret keeping is when you deliberately conceal information, right? So you don't share information. And I'll elaborate here on both of those. So, topic avoidance, again, is deliberately avoiding discussing a particular topic. And when people are in relationships, they are most likely both aware of the topic and both avoid it, right? And that distinguishes topic avoidance from secret keeping, because secret keeping is intentionally keeping information away from others. And both topic avoidance and secret keeping are common across all types of relationships. There's a study conducted in 1995 that found that 95% of college students have at least one topic they consider to be taboo or off limits, especially in their friendships and their romantic relationships. We can avoid talking about a lot of things, of course, but there are a handful of topics that are more likely to be avoided than others. So, in one study in particular, the researchers identified 6 commonly avoided topics, again, in romantic relationships and in friendships. So, we have relationship issues. So, you might avoid talking about the state or the future of the relationship, norms and expectations, like and dislike for someone in particular. But if you avoid talking about the relationship, this could potentially lead to problems later, right? So it's not something that is necessarily a good thing. We also commonly avoid talking about negative experiences and failures, right? So this could be things like traumatic experiences or experiences that may be considered socially unacceptable. Um, we might avoid talking about romantic relationship experiences, so past relationships. We might avoid talking about a past relationship to avoid hurting your current partner or reliving a bad experience. We also avoid talking about both past and present sexual activity, right? Those are things that are often not spoken about. Sexual preferences, some people have a hard time discussing, condom use, those kinds of things. Friendships are oddly maybe something that we might avoid talking about, but the quality of a friendship, you might avoid talking about a friendship that you have with a person who it like could be a potential romantic partner. You might avoid talking about a friendship that you have that your parents or other people in your social network don't approve of. And then finally, we tend to avoid talking about dangerous behavior, so things that are potentially harmful to you. Now, there have been other studies that have looked at commonly avoided topics in other types of relationships. So, one of them was commonly avoided topics between parents and children. So, things like other family members, money, drinking and drug use, religion, so on and so forth. So I want to make sure I'm clear that there is no one study that will ever be able to list all of the topics that are avoided. Think about, who we again, who do we study when we're studying interpersonal communication? Typically, we are sampling college students and other young adults, which means that there is some information missing in our research. So in this particular example, we might overlook topics commonly avoided by older adults because the relationship tends to focus on young people. And additionally, topics avoided by people who are not white middle class Americans. So some individuals who do not fit that particular demographic might avoid entirely different topics. I mentioned religion before. So if you're dating someone potentially like outside of your culture or your religious affiliation, you might avoid speaking about that relationship with your family members, just as an example. So moving on to secrets, which is another privacy management strategy. People basically tend to keep secrets about the same topics they avoid. So, common secrets that people have in their romantic relationships and friendships include dating and sexual history, affairs, and then anything that could cause a personality or opinion conflict. Some secrets are positive, though many are negative. But we do have some positive secrets. So if you're planning a surprise party, for example, that's something fun and exciting. Maybe you have an idea for a gift that you want to give someone that's really special, so you keep that a secret. Maybe you've planned a vacation for you and your sister, right? So all of those things are generally positive things we keep secrets about. But unfortunately, we do keep a number of negative secrets, and that's often why they're secrets in the first place, because we maybe have a number of fears associated with sharing that information, like we talked about at the end of part one, right? The fears or the risks associated with disclosure are often reasons why we keep secrets in the first place. One common context for secret keeping is families, which I find very interesting. And there are three forms of family secrets that are relevant to family units. These differ in how complex the boundary coordination is. So you might have whole family secrets. So this is something that your entire family knows, but not outsiders. So this could be a secret about a financial situation. This could be a secret about a pregnancy, for example. So these are secrets that people inside the family know, but you're not sharing it with anybody outside the family. You could have intra-family secrets. So these are secrets that some family members are aware of and others are not. So for example, if you're planning a 50th anniversary party, you might keep that secret from obviously the people that you're celebrating, but you might also keep it a secret from people who aren't planning that party so that they don't unintentionally, give away the surprise. If you've experienced or you have a family member who has experienced a stay in rehab for, any number of reasons, that might be something that only some people know while others don't. Relationship troubles. So if you and your partner are having a problem, this might be something that you talk about with your siblings, but maybe not your parents. So those kinds of things are known to some members of the family, but not known to others. And then we also have individual secrets. So these are secrets that are held by a single individual and kept secret from everyone else in the family. These individual secrets may or may not be shared with members outside the family, though, right? So if you're experiencing something at work or school, you might have somebody in that environment that you trust enough to talk to, but you don't maybe want to talk to your family about it for a number of reasons, possibly because you don't think that they will understand what you're going through. So why do we, aside from, privacy management, what are some of the reasons for avoiding topics and keeping secrets? There are three main kind of categories for avoiding topics and keeping secrets. And the first are relationship-based motivations. Um, the single best motivator to keep a secret or avoid a topic is to protect the relationship. So if you're worried the other person will disapprove and potentially abandon you, you are more likely to keep a secret or to avoid that particular topic. But we may also keep secrets and avoid topics to keep a relationship from becoming more intimate than we want it to. So if you dislike someone and that person wants to become friends with you, you might avoid certain topics that would allow the relationship to become more intimate, right? Um, and then certainly when our relationships are deteriorating, we tend to shut down all communication. So relationship destruction and de-escalation are also relationship-based motivations for keeping secrets and avoiding certain topics. Individually, you might keep a secret or avoid talking about something to protect yourself, right? To maintain a positive self image because you fear that the other person might be embarrassed or that you might be embarrassed based on, how they respond. You might fear that they'll criticize you. So in other words, you fear that the disclosure will threaten your identity in some way. And we also, again, are motivated to keep secrets and avoid topics to maintain privacy. So you might avoid talking about your romantic relationship or your job or your family because you're currently experiencing problems and you just don't want people to ask about those kinds of things. And finally, we have information-based motivations. So these are situations when we choose to avoid disclosure based on the information that we expect to receive from the other person. So how do we expect the other person to respond? So one of the information-based motivations is partner unresponsiveness. So this is a situation where maybe you think the other person will find your disclosure very trivial, or they won't respond in a helpful way, or maybe you think that they lack the knowledge necessary to provide a useful response. So let's say you want advice on how to deal with a particular problem, but you just don't think your parents will provide much help in helping you through that. Or maybe you don't think that they'll care enough to answer in a way that's useful to you. Futility of discussion is talking about a topic, or you think that talking about a given topic would be a waste of time, maybe because the other person just won't understand your perspective or won't understand your behavior. So you avoid disclosing because you're kind of thinking, well, it won't make any difference or do any good or change anything, so why bother? So the discussion then is futile. And then we might also keep a secret or avoid a topic because you feel that you lack the communication efficacy or the skills to bring up the topic or to maintain the discussion effectively. It's important to note that the reasons for engaging in topic avoidance and secret keeping may overlap with one another. So you might be motivated by any number of these things. So for example, protecting the relationship might be a motivation, but identity management might also be a relevant motivation in a certain situation because you don't want to look bad. And you don't want to be perceived as anything other than a positive person, a good partner, a good friend, whatever. So that serves to maintain your identity, but also serves to protect the relationship, because if someone starts to think that you're not a good person, then that relationship could de-escalate and eventually terminate. One of the questions that comes up when we talk about avoidance and secret keeping is, can it have positive consequences, or are the consequences always negative? There are some positive consequences, but many researchers find topic avoidance to be an indicator of an unsatisfying relationship. On that note, let's talk about some of the consequences of keeping and revealing secrets. So, negative consequences of keeping secrets include things like it could be harmful to your self esteem, especially if the information concealed is something that you regret or maybe even makes you question yourself, right? And so then you're going to be more likely to ruminate on that negative aspect of yourself if you're keeping that a secret. Keeping secrets are also stressful and can lead to unpleasant or awkward interactions, right? So, for example, you're keeping a secret from someone, and that can make an interaction feel very awkward, or you might avoid that person altogether. And, certainly you can't maintain a relationship if you're avoiding someone. Keeping secrets also encourages concealment in some cases of relationship problems, right? So you pretend that everything is fine in your relationship, but maybe it's not because, right, you're not talking about it. You're afraid to talk about it. And this can lead to the next one, which is deception, right? So you're maybe making excuses to avoid a person or for why you can't hang out with them. And if they do discover your secret, then you may have even more problems than when you started. Keeping secrets can also create power imbalances because knowledge is power, right? So let's say as a child to your parents, you find out that one of your parents is having an affair, and now you can essentially use that information against them. I certainly wouldn't encourage it, but that is something that you could do because information is often currency. Um, Keeping secrets also can change the communication, of course, by decreasing the breadth, right? Because there are fewer topics allowed to be discussed. And Keeping secrets can lead to patterns of split loyalty. So this would be an example specifically relevant to like family secrets. So as a secret keeper, you have to choose between remaining loyal to the secret holder or remaining loyal to the people who might be hurt by not knowing the secret. There are also negative consequences of revealing secrets. So, first of all, you might get a negative reaction from the listener. As a matter of fact, this is often the reason that survivors of abuse and assault won't tell because they fear being labeled weak or responsible for what happened. And confidants often distance themselves from secret tellers after negative disclosures, right? Another consequence of revealing a secret is issues with privacy management. Once you've told someone something, you may lose control over the information and where it goes. And certainly, revealing secrets could be seen as a betrayal by other people, especially if it wasn't your secret to reveal. So, this could erode trust and may decrease future disclosures. With that being said, there are some positive consequences of both keeping and revealing secrets. So, in families in particular, keeping secrets can actually help children form their own identities because eventually children need to separate from their parents, and secrets can help with this. Also, keeping secrets can increase cohesion or closeness among the secret holders because you have sort of a special bond with this other person that you trust, right? Each of you trusts the other enough to reveal this information. So it's also a sign of trust and belonging and inclusion in that relationship. And there are some positive consequences of revealing secrets as well. So you could experience fewer psychological as well as physical problems because, once again, keeping secrets is stressful. So revealing those secrets could help to relieve the tension associated with that. Revealing secrets also helps deter the possibility of hyper accessibility. So, one of the things about secrets is that you're often trying not to think about it because you don't want to accidentally tell. But the more you try not to think about the secret, the more accessible it becomes to the point of hyper accessibility in some cases. So, it's almost like all you can think about. But if you tell, you don't have to worry about hyper accessibility. You don't have to attempt to suppress the thoughts associated with that secret. And then finally, revealing secrets can lead to the resolution of those secrets. You can resolve issues created by or related to the secret by bringing them out into the open. So, this is the end of part 2 of this lecture. We have spoken about both disclosure and privacy and the relationship between them. And once again, just to kind of put a pin in this, privacy can be maintained or given up through the process of self-disclosure. So it's very difficult to study or understand one without understanding the other.